The sheriff laughed when the firefighter suggested evacuating the town square. "Son, I handled bomb threats in Chicago for 15 years. This is probably some kid's science project." But when the device started its countdown, exactly where the quiet firefighter had predicted, his arrogance turned to panic. The man in the worn fire department jacket wasn't running. He was kneeling beside the device with steady hands that had defused 200 IEDs in Fallujah. Hands that remembered what the sheriff had never learned, that the difference between saving lives and causing catastrophe was often measured in millimeters. Welcome to Secrets Never Told. Before we begin this explosive story of hidden expertise and deadly precision, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from today? And if you believe the calmest person in the room is often the most dangerous, hit that subscribe button and help us honor those who walk toward danger while others run away. Millbrook, Montana, was the kind of town that appeared on postcards. Population 8,000, nestled in a valley surrounded by pine forests. Main Street had a diner, hardware store, and family pharmacy that had been there since 1952. It was where people moved when they wanted life to slow down, which is exactly why Levi Hartman had chosen it 3 years ago. The Millbrook Volunteer Fire Department occupied a brick building on Oak Street, home to 1 engine, 1 ladder truck, and 12 part-time firefighters who spent most shifts responding to false alarm. Real emergencies were rare, maybe 2 structure fires a year, occasional car accidents, and 1 memorable incident involving a moose stuck in someone's pool. Levi fit perfectly into this quiet routine. At 35, he was lean and weathered, with dark hair going gray at the temples and eyes that seemed perpetually tired. He spoke little, smiled less, and moved through shifts with methodical efficiency. He cleaned equipment with obsessive precision, maintained gear with religious care, and always checked his tools 3 times. His hands were what people noticed most, unnaturally steady, the kind of steadiness that made holding a coffee cup look surgical. The other firefighters had theories. Former military, definitely. Maybe Marine Corps. Probably saw action given how he went quiet when news mentioned the Middle East. But Levi never talked about his past. What nobody knew was that Levi Hartman had once been Staff Sergeant Levi Hartman, United States Army, 775, Explosive Ordnance Disposal Company. For 7 years, he'd neutralized improvised explosive devices across Iraq and Afghanistan. 237 confirmed disposal operations, 0 casualties on his team, 3 Army Commendation Medal until Fallujah, 2019. A compound raid, intelligence suggesting an IED factory. Levi's job was to secure any explosive devices. He'd cleared 3 rooms, neutralized 4 IEDs, and was working on the 5th when he made the call that would haunt him forever. The device looked wrong. The wiring pattern didn't match the others. His instinct, honed through years of staying alive by trusting his gut, screamed to wait, to request additional backup, to approach more carefully. But his commanding officer was pushing for speed. Political pressure to show results before sunset, to wrap up the operation while media attention was favorable. Levi had voiced his concerns. "Sir, this one's different. I need more time to assess." "We don't have more time, Sergeant. Intel says the bomb maker left 30 minutes ago. We need to clear this compound and move to the next target before dark." "With respect, sir, rushing is how people die in EOD work. Your opinion is noted. You have 10 minutes to render it safe." "That's an order." Levi had made the approach. He'd been right about the device being different. It was rigged with a secondary trigger he'd never encountered before. A pressure plate hidden beneath the primary device that activated when you disabled the main trigger. His technique was flawless, his procedure textbook perfect, but the bomb maker had been more creative than anyone anticipated, and the intelligence about him leaving had been wrong. He'd been watching from a hidden position, waiting to see if his masterpiece would work. The explosion killed 2 intelligence officers in the adjacent room who'd been photographing bomb-making materials. Levi survived with minor injuries because he'd been positioned correctly, his body angled to minimize blast exposure, but the guilt was anything but minor. He could still hear their voices sometimes, late at night. Lieutenant Chen talking about his daughter's upcoming graduation, Specialist Morrison joking about the terrible coffee at the forward operating base, then the blast, the silence, and the knowledge that he'd followed orders perfectly and gotten 2 people killed anyway. The official report cleared him of wrongdoing. The Board of Inquiry found his procedures were textbook correct, that the device was unprecedented in its sophistication, that no EOD technician could have reasonably anticipated the secondary trigger. They offered him another deployment, a promotion, recognition for his years of exemplary service and the fact that his actions had prevented even more casualties. Levi turned it all in, the uniform, the career, the identity he'd built for 7 years, because he'd learned something in that Fallujah compound that no no training manual taught, that being technically correct wasn't the same as being right, that following orders didn't absolve you of responsibility for the outcome, and that sometimes the difference between life and death wasn't skill or procedure. It was having the courage to say no when authority demanded yes. He'd drifted for a year after discharge, taking odd jobs and moving between cities, trying to find something that felt like purpose without the weight of life and death decisions. His therapist at the VA told him he had moral injury, a wound to his sense of right and wrong that came from being forced to act against his better judgment. The nightmares weren't about the explosion itself, but about the 10 seconds before it, when he'd known something was wrong but had proceeded anyway because a superior officer had ordered it. Then he'd seen the posting for Millbrook's volunteer fire department, a place where the most dangerous call might be a kitchen grease fire, where saving lives meant pulling cats from trees instead of approaching devices designed to kill, where his decisions would involve which hose to deploy rather than which wire to cut. It had seemed perfect, quiet, safe, forgettable, a place where he could use his training to help people without the crushing responsibility of knowing that one wrong move meant death. For 3 years, it had been exactly that, until Sheriff Cole Drayton arrived. Drayton was everything Levi wasn't: loud, confident, eager to remind everyone about his credentials. He was 42, gym-built, with a perfectly maintained mustache and SWAT team stories he shared constantly. He'd transferred from Chicago PD. Needed a change of pace, he'd explained. But don't worry, I'm bringing big city expertise to keep Millbrook safe. Within 2 months, Drayton had antagonized most emergency services. He'd lectured paramedics, criticized fire response time, and generally made clear he considered small-town workers amateurs. His first real interaction with Levi came during a joint training exercise Drayton insisted on organizing. "Gentlemen," Drayton announced, "in Chicago, we coordinated PD and fire services daily. Today, I'm teaching you what real emergency response looks like." He spent an hour demonstrating tactical entries, explaining Chicago SWAT protocols, treating firefighters like children. Levi watched from the back, face neutral, but he noticed Drayton's tactical approach would have gotten people killed in actual hostile environments. He noticed the sheriff's confidence was swagger, not substance. "Hartman," Drayton called suddenly. "You're former military, right?" "Yes, sir." "What branch?" "Army." "Combat?" "Some." Drayton smiled. "Then you know what I'm talking about. Real training, real tactics, not small-town improvisation. Different contexts require different approaches, Sheriff. What works in Chicago might not work in Millbrook. Danger is danger. If you've seen combat, you know that." "I know that overconfidence kills more people than lack of training," Levi said quietly. The room went silent. "You got something to say, Hartman? Just that past experience doesn't guarantee future success." Spoken like someone who probably drove a truck in the Army, Drayton laughed. "No offense, but there's a difference between military logistics and actual tactical work." Levi didn't respond. He simply looked at Drayton with those tired, steady eyes, then returned to his equipment. 2 weeks later, on an October morning, everything changed. The call came at 9:47 a.m. A suspicious package in the town square, near the gazebo where the farmers market was setting up. A metal box, olive green, with visible wires. Sheriff Drayton arrived first. By the time fire showed up, he'd established a perimeter. Levi stepped off the engine and assessed. The square was filling with vendors and shoppers. The package sat 30 yards from the gazebo, near a bench under an oak tree. "Probably nothing," Drayton was saying loudly. "We get these calls all the time in the city, usually someone's lunchbox, but we take every call seriously." Levi approached Captain Torres quietly. "Mike, I should look at it." "Sheriff's handling it. The placement is deliberate. 30 yards from the gazebo, positioned for maximum fragmentation radius. Those wires aren't random. That's controlled placement." Torres studied him. "Talk to Drayton." Levi approached the sheriff, who was explaining they'd wait for state police bomb squad. "Sheriff, I'd like to look at the package." "Hartman, we're waiting for the bomb squad. 2 hours is a long time if that's a real device with a timer. And what makes you think it's real? The placement, the wiring, the housing type. That's military ordnance casing. And you know this how? I pay attention." "To what? Action movies?" Drayton laughed. "Son, I've handled bomb threats in Chicago for 15 years. You know how many were actual bombs? 0. You know how many were pranks or false alarms? All of them. Montana isn't Chicago. Danger is danger. And the danger here is causing panic over probably some kid's science project. We follow protocol. We wait for qualified personnel. And we don't let volunteer firefighters play bomb squad." "Sheriff, that's final, Hartman." Levi returned to the engine, pulled out his phone, and made a call to a number he hadn't dialed in 3 years. "Hartman, that really you?" "Yeah, Cap. Need a favor. Military ordnance casing, olive green, 12 by 8 inches, visible wiring consistent with remote detonation. Where are you?" "Small town in Montana. Local sheriff thinks it's false alarm. I think it's real. Give me 5 minutes." While While waiting, Levi observed the square. More vendors arriving, civilians gathering to watch. He noticed a young man in the crowd, mid-20s, wearing a jacket too heavy for the weather, watching with too much focus. His phone rang. Got a match? Modified M112 demolition charge housing. Military issue. If weaponized, you're looking at a pound of C4 equivalent with 50-meter blast radius. Casualties? Anyone within 30 meters is dead. Anyone within 50 critically injured. Levi, these devices are linked to an anti-government group operating in the Northwest, making threats about small-town tyranny. You got reason someone would target your town? New sheriff, former Chicago PD. Been aggressive about changing things. Then you've got motive. These devices have anti-tamper mechanisms. Anyone without EOD training tries to move them. They detonate immediately. How long do I have? Unknown. Could be minutes or hours. I'd evacuate and call military EOD, not local police. Levi hung up and approached Drayton again with Torres. Sheriff, we need to evacuate the square. Now. Hartman, I told you. That's a modified M112 demolition charge. 1 pound C4 equivalent. Blast radius 50 meters. Everyone here is in the kill zone. And you determined this how? Military database match. EOD contacts confirmed it. You went around my authority. The device began beeping. Soft, rhythmic, barely audible from 30 yards. But everyone heard it in the sudden silence. Drayton's face went pale. Deputies looked at each other. Civilians began running. Everybody stay calm! Drayton shouted, voice shaking. There's no time for orderly, Levi said. Captain, get everyone back 200 yards. Sheriff, call military EOD. Nobody gets closer except me. You? What are you going to do? Levi was already pulling gear from the engine. When he turned back, he held a toolkit and wore an expression completely different from his usual tired resignation. I'm going to make sure that device doesn't detonate while we evacuate. You can't. Sheriff, you have 2 choices. Let me approach or wait 2 hours while it counts down. Make the choice fast, because I estimate 3 minutes before that square becomes a crater. Torres nodded. Do it. Levi was already walking toward the device, movements calm and measured, carrying tools with practiced ease. Behind him, the square erupted into organized chaos, but Levi's focus narrowed to the device ahead, to the familiar countdown beeping, to the steady calm that had kept him alive through 7 years of defusing bombs. His hands didn't shake. They never did, because Staff Sergeant Levi Hartman, 3 years retired, still knew exactly what he was doing. The device sat against the oak tree. As Levi approached, his mind cataloged details with systematic precision. Beeping pattern, steady, 1 pulse every 2 seconds. Wiring showed professional craftsmanship. Tree placement would direct the blast outward into the square. Levi knelt slowly, setting his kit beside him. Hartman, Drayton's voice carried. What are you doing? My job. He examined the housing without touching it. The beeping had a slight echo, possibly multiple devices or a secondary trigger. Talk to me, Torres said over the radio. What do you see? Modified M112, 12 by 8 inches, remote detonation capability with active countdown timer, possibly dual trigger. Can you stop it? Working on that. Levi used a small mirror to see inside the housing gap. What he saw made his jaw tighten. This wasn't simple. Someone had modified it extensively. He could see the timer, commercial digital clock rigged to detonator, but beneath it, mercury switch that would trigger if moved, and a pressure plate underneath. 3 separate triggers. Timer, mercury switch, pressure plate. Disable one, the others still function. Levi, Torres said. State police 40 minutes. Military EOD 90 minutes minimum. Can you hold? Negative. Multiple triggers. I need to address it now. What do you need? Time and silence. Levi took a slow breath. Training was coming back. Muscle memory from hundreds of similar moments. But underneath was Fallujah's ghost. The memory of being wrong, of 2 people dying. He pushed it away. This wasn't Fallujah. He selected a fiber optic camera, threading it through the housing gap. The device interior appeared on his screen. C4 explosive 1 pound. Timer showing 217. Mercury switch, pressure plate, and one more detail. A receiver indicating remote detonation capability. We have a problem, Levi said. What kind? Remote detonation. The timer might be a distraction. Someone could trigger this manually. Someone's watching or waiting. Levi looked up, scanning the perimeter. His eyes found the young man in the too heavy jacket, hand in pocket, watching intently. Sheriff northeast corner, male, mid-20s, dark jacket, hand in left pocket. Detain him. Do not let him pull his hand from that pocket. On what authority? On the authority of someone who's defused 237 IEDs and knows what a bomber looks like. Move now, or everyone dies. Drayton moved toward the suspect with deputies, trying to appear casual. Levi returned to the device, timer showing 1:47. He had to work fast. Using the camera, he traced wiring from timer to detonator. Military blasting cap with civilian electronics integrated. The bomber had training, probably military, but improvised with commercial components. That improvisation might be the key. Military EOD procedures were for military devices. This was hybrid. The bomber assumed anyone approaching would follow standard protocol, tripping secondary triggers. But Levi saw something. The civilian timer had a weakness. Running on 9-volt battery, connection exposed where it met detonator circuit. If he could interrupt that connection without moving the device or triggering mercury switch, the timer would stop. Timer showed 1:23. Levi selected a wire with copper clips, threading it through the housing gap with millimeter precision toward the battery connection. "Hartman!" Drayton crackled. "Subject resisting. He's reaching for..." Scuffle sounds. Then, "Subject secured," had radio transmitter. Levi didn't respond. His focus was on the copper wire approaching the battery terminal. One slip would complete a circuit that would detonate everything. 0104, 0103. The wire touched the first terminal. Now the second before, the suspect's voice. "You can't stop it. The timer's rigged. Shut him up," Levi said quietly. Then to himself, "Steady, 1 millimeter at a time. 0047. The second terminal was close, but the angle was wrong. He needed to approach from underneath, threading between pressure plate and battery housing. 0031. The wire was in position. One more connection and the timer circuit would be bypassed, but his hands stopped. He saw it now. The second battery, hidden beneath the first, daisy-chained, providing backup power if primary circuit was interrupted. Disabling the first wouldn't stop countdown, just like Fallujah. Same technique, same trap. 0019. Levi's mind raced. He could warn everyone to run, abandon the device, or try something different, something that violated every protocol but might work. The bomber was smart, but also predictable, following a pattern from similar devices in Iraq, which meant the bomber thought like Levi thought. 0011. Levi grabbed a small electromagnet for disarming electronics. He positioned it over where he estimated the second battery. The magnet would scramble circuitry, interrupt current to detonator. It wouldn't stop the timer, but would break the connection. If he was wrong, immediate detonation. If right, maybe 3 seconds before backup circuits kicked in. 00:05. Levi activated the electromagnet. The beeping stuttered, changed pitch, stopped. Complete silence. For 3 heartbeats, nothing. Levi remained still, waiting to see if his gamble succeeded or if these would be his last conscious moments. In that silence, his mind flashed back to Fallujah, to the moment before that explosion when he'd known, absolutely known, that something was wrong but had proceeded anyway because orders were orders. He'd survived that blast physically, but had carried the weight of it every day since. Not this time. This time, he'd trusted his instincts. This time, he'd made the call based on what he knew was right, not what authority demanded. This time, if he was wrong, at least he'd be wrong on his own terms. Then, with careful precision, he disconnected primary battery, secondary battery, detonator circuit, working faster now, but maintaining that deliberate care that had defined every successful operation of his career. After 90 seconds of the most intense focus of his life, he sat back on his heels and allowed himself one slow breath. His hands were still steady. They always were during the work, but he could feel the adrenaline beginning to filter through his system now that the immediate danger had passed. He spoke into the radio, his voice calm and professional. "Device is safe. Primary detonator disabled. Don't let anyone approach yet. I still need to clear the pressure plate and mercury switch." Over the radio, he heard cheering. Torres's voice came through, thick with emotion he was trying to control. "Copy that, Levi. Take all the time you need. Take all the time in the world." Levi took his time. 20 more minutes of careful, methodical work, disabling each secondary trigger with the same precision he'd used on the primary device. He documented the construction, photographed the components for the bomb squad's analysis, and finally, with the kind of care that came from knowing this was still a training opportunity for whoever reviewed his work, lifted the now inert bomb and placed it in the containment vessel he'd brought from the fire engine. Only then did he stand, stretch his back with a soft groan that reminded him he wasn't 25 anymore, and walk away from the oak tree where Operation 237 had just become Operation 238. As he crossed the square, he became aware of the crowd that had gathered at the perimeter. Hundreds of people, the entire farmers market crowd, plus curious locals who'd heard the commotion, all watching in absolute silence. When they saw him walking away from the tree, carrying the containment vessel, the silence broke into spontaneous applause. Levi didn't acknowledge it. He just kept walking, because that's what you did after a successful operation. You secured the device, you debriefed, and you moved on to the next task. Celebration came later, if at all, and usually in private, where the weight of what could have happened didn't have to be shared with civilians who would never truly understand how close they'd come to dying. When military EOD arrived from Fort Carson, the team leader reviewed Levi's work with respect. "This is textbook EOD procedure. Better than textbook. You adapted to modified trigger configuration I've only seen twice in 15 years. Who trained you? 775th Explosive Ordnance Disposal, Iraq, 2012 to 2019. The captain's eyebrows rose. "You're that Hartman, the one with the perfect record?" "Not perfect. Not anymore." "Bullshit. You just added another save." He gestured to the device. "This was rigged by someone with training. Anti-tamper, dual battery, multiple triggers. 9 out of 10 EOD techs would have tripped the secondary timer. You saw through it. Lucky guess. There's no luck in EOD, just preparation and skill." He extended his hand. "Thank you." Levi shook it, then turned to find Drayton standing nearby, looking aged. "You were EOD," Drayton said. "Yes." "How long?" 7 years, 237 successful operations before today. "And you've been a volunteer firefighter for 3 years." "Yes." "Why didn't you tell me?" Levi looked at him steadily. "You didn't ask. You assumed because I didn't advertise credentials. I didn't have any. You confused confidence with competence. In my line of work, that assumption gets people killed." Drayton was quiet. Then, "I'm sorry. Don't apologize to me. Apologize to the town you almost got killed because you were more interested in being right than being careful." Captain Torres appeared with the mayor. "Mr. Hartman," she said formally, "on behalf of Millbrook, thank you. You saved this town. Just did what needed doing. Is there anything we can do?" "Yes. Make sure Sheriff Drayton gets proper EOD coordination training, and maybe invest in bomb detection equipment for the fire department. Consider it done." As she left, Torres put a hand on Levi's shoulder. "You scared me today, but you also saved a lot of lives. I'm just a firefighter, Mike. You're a lot more than that, and now everyone knows it." Levi looked across the square where news crews were setting up, where his anonymity was evaporating. "Yeah, that's what I'm afraid of, because Staff Sergeant Levi Hartman had come to Millbrook to forget. But today, the town learned that some skills, some identities, some pasts can never truly be left behind. And maybe that wasn't entirely bad. Sometimes the past doesn't need forgetting. Sometimes it just needs to be used wisely. 1 millimeter, one steady hand, one careful decision at a time. Have you ever met someone whose quiet competence saved the day? Someone who never bragged, but when the moment came, knew exactly what to do? Share their story in the comments. At Secrets Never Told, we believe true heroes don't seek the spotlight. They simply do what needs to be done, then return to the shadows. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories about hidden heroes who walk toward danger while others run away. Hit that notification bell, and remember, the calmest person in the room is often the most dangerous or the most prepared.